Even here doing the junkyard crawl at Burniston Auto Wrecking in Burniston, Massachusetts. And this is a 1967 Chevy Chevelle. 1967 was a very good year for Chevrolet with 1.95 million cars sold. And in fact, one of every 4 cars on the road sold new was a Chevrolet in 1967. And a big part of that was cars like this. Of those 1.95 million Chevrolets, a total of 369,106 were Chevelles or Malibus. Now this one here is a 2-door hardtop, a sport coupe, but the question is it a 396, an SS 396 big block? Well, we got to know. The engine is gone, the tranny is who knows what, but to find out, we go to the trim tag or the cowl tag in GM land. You look right here and we can see here 67 is the model year. 136, okay, it's a V8 sport coupe. 138 is what we'd want to see if this was an SS 396, of which 59,685 were built. So this ain't one of them, but this is a V8 2-door sport coupe, which means 327 or 283 power from the factory. Now, another thing we see here, of course, is paint code CC, which means ermine white. And trim code 728A is medium blue vinyl interior. And can, what does that mean? Can, yes it can. Well no, that means Kansas City Assembly Plant, kind of unusual. Other plants were Atlanta, Baltimore, Maryland, Framingham, Mass, and Fremont, California. What about Norwood, Ohio? Well, Norwood, Ohio would make some Chevelles in various years, but for 1967, Norwood was very busy making something else that was new in 67, the Camaro. So no Chevelles were built at Norwood in 1967. But again, this was built at Kansas City, Missouri, way back when. Now this has something new for 67. This is the dual circuit master cylinder. This is a manual brake car. Keep in mind that 5,153 cars were built with disc brakes for the first time ever in 1967 on a midsize Chevy. This ain't one of them, but with that said, this is new, the dual circuit master cylinder. Now this is a Car Life magazine right here. Speaking of brakes, this is December of 1966 and has a little preview of the new 1967 Chevys. There's a beautiful SS396 Chevelle right there. But let's look at something inside. This is a house ad from General Motors right here, showing all the cool new 67s, and front and center, the red Camaro. Again, Norwood, Ohio was working overtime building the Camaro. And keep in mind, the Camaro was Chevrolet's answer to the Mustang, and something like 240,000 of these things were built in the first year. And keep in mind, over at Ford, sales fell by about 240,000 units in 1967, so that means a lot of frustrated Camaro buyers were buying Fords until the Camaro finally arrived at the Chevy dealership in 1967. So there it is. But on the other side of this, we see information on brakes. Let's hold this down here. You can see right here the GTO brakes. We see right here self-adjusting fin drums, front discs optional, extra cost, very cool. The SS396 Chevelle, self-adjusting drums, front discs available, semi-metallics. And when it gets to the Buick GS400, right here it says here self-adjusting fin aluminum drums. So that means the GS400 Buick does have aluminum drums up front. Pretty cool. And of course the Olds 442, self-adjusting drums, front power discs available. But one thing I got to point out, all of these cars have the same size, 9.5-inch diameter drum brake up front, which is frankly the same size brake that Chevy was using on their 6-cylinder cars. And of course, 6-cylinder Tempest had the same size brakes as a GTO. But again, the 67 disc brake option solved the problems of under-braking on GM muscle cars. And again, only 5,153 SS 396s or Chevys of any kind were built with discs up front in 67, but that number would mushroom as we get into 68, 69, 70, and disc brakes became standard on super sports a couple years later. Let's take another walk around this puppy. So we know it's a small block car. You know, that's okay. It's a standard manual steering drum brake car. And again, it is a sport coupe. It's kind of sad to see this, you know, in this condition here. Let's trade spaces and let's take a peek inside. I'll open the door here. And we can see the original ermine white has been resprayed, but the medium blue metallic vinyl interior, remnants of that are still there. The bucket seats in this thing are not factory items. These are high back buckets from probably a Japanese car of some kind. I'm not sure. They're not Chevy, that's for darn sure. And keep in mind too that the Strato buckets were not standard equipment in any Chevelle. You paid extra for them, even the Super Sport. But the back seat area all gutted out, and there's the braces right there from the axle hump to the rear package tray, and all those things that help to stiffen up the body. Now these are body-on-frame cars, kind of unusual. You got to remember the Ford Fairlane and the Plymouth and Belvedere, Dodge Coronet, which are competitors to this, were not body-on-frame. They were unit construction cars. GM was the only one making body-on-frame mid-sized cars in the mid-1960s. A little heavier, but that's how they did it. Let's go into the trunk compartment here and watch your step there, Shane, behind you. And today our camera's a little shakier because our stabilizer gyro took a poop, so we're doing this handheld. That's okay. If you can handle it, I can. Inside the trunk, which is missing, but we see that ermine white paint, traces of it on the bottom of the hinges here, the original hinges. And inside here is a transmission. Not sure if it's the original one. There's the torque converter right there. And let's identify this tranny real quick. Let me walk over here. Could be a Turbo 400, could be a Power Glide. Let's have a look and see. Again, the Turbo 350 wouldn't arrive till 1969. So again, Turbo 400 or Power Glide would be the only two trannies you'll find in a 1967. And yeah, Power Glide, there it is right there. Unmistakable, little tiny body, short tail shaft. But again, the 2-speed Power Glide, not a bad transmission, really. The only downside to these things is the fact they have 2 gears. And in fact, Corvettes all the way through 1967, even 427s, had 2-speed Power Glides. Now, the problem with that is that on like a 3-speed, first, second, drive, you know, the engine has more flexibility. In a Power Glide car, you first drive, and that's kind of it. And especially with a Power Glide car, if you're going 50 miles an hour, you kick it, it pumps down in the first gear, it downshifts, and it revs, so it feels like 7,000 RPM, but downshifting in a Power Glide car at 45, 50 miles an hour feels like self-destruction, but they're designed to do it. But again, 2-speed Power Glide, 1967, the 3-speed automatic did finally arrive in Chevelles, big block cars, etc. Now this one does have apparently a blacked out tail panel, which kind of hints at SS396, but again, the 136 in the style code and the VIN tell us this is not a 138 big block car, which would certainly have the blacked out rear cove panel. So that's the story of this 1967 Chevelle, really one of the cars that helped to make Chevrolet #1 in the sales race in Detroit throughout the 1960s. So if you like this car and this video, be sure to subscribe to the Steve Banks YouTube channel. There's plenty more to come from Bernstein Auto Wrecking.